Welcome to the Technology Pulse podcast, brought to you by Daily Computers, providing technology solutions to the public and private sectors in Maryland and Virginia for more than 35 years. Visit www.daly.com for more information. This episode is brought to you by AVID Products, delivering affordable audio without sacrificing quality. And now, here's your host, Rick from Daily.
Joining us today on the Technology Pulse, we have Mike Logan. Mike is the Chief Commercial Officer for AVID Products. Mike, welcome to the Technology Pulse.
Thank you, Rick. It's great to be here today.
It is great to have you because, Mike, we've chatted a few times before recording this podcast about something that is obviously near and dear to you and to your company, and that is audio in different settings. And we're definitely going to get into that. But before we do, I want to let you introduce yourself. Tell us about AVID and tell us how long you've been with the company.
Sure. Well, Rick, I've been with the company now for, I guess, just under a year. But I've worked with the company for 4 or 5 years now as a reseller on the other side of the fence. So I love the company so much. I really just wanted to be part of it. So I came over here and wanted to be part of that experience. The company itself is fascinating because it's one of the leading providers of personalized audio experiences in education, healthcare, and transportation. It started back in 1953 when they started developing headsets for the airline industry. And at the time, they were one of the dominant forces in the airline industry with some of the most major carriers that you're aware of. 20 years later, in the 70s, they started getting into the healthcare market, and you saw this big emergence of audio and personalized audio solutions in hospitals, healthcare, rehabilitation centers. And then fast forward to the 90s, AVID started really looking at the education industry. And that's really where we've made the biggest splash of late. Now, we still do a tremendous amount of work with the transportation industry, the healthcare, hospitality industry. Most people, I say, if you travel a couple times a year, there's a really good chance you've used one of our products and may not have known it. So it's a pretty fun line to be part of. It's great to be part of a company that's so diverse in its approach, yet so centered in its mission to provide a high quality personal audio experience.
And it's not just providing that high quality experience, but it's providing it to scale. Because, again, when you start thinking about the really high end audio devices, you've got your Bose and you've got your Apple AirPods Max, and you've got all those different types of devices out there that, again, hundreds and hundreds of dollars, because that's really what a lot of people think you need to spend in order to get those really high quality experiences. But yet I have used your products. I continue to use your products when I'm on my conference calls and want to make sure that I'm not blasting audio all over the office. And I mean, I have to say, in comparison, the quality is there, but I'm fairly certain we're not talking about several $100 units here, right?
You're not. And that's the thing. One of the things about AVID products that makes it unique is that we're centered on purposeful, accessible solutions. So when we make something, we do it with a purpose. What's the problem we're trying to solve? So an airline product is very specific to airline. A healthcare product is very specific to healthcare. And of course, an education product is very specific to education. Then the accessible part, and that can mean so many different things. But to us, it means keeping our solutions affordable enough that the everyday user, the common person, can afford to have a high quality personalized experience that's appropriate for their current environment or situation.
And I see that flowing very well into the education space because, and as we're going to talk about in just a little bit, the need for audio in education just has grown exponentially. The use cases for audio in education have, more than quadrupled just over the past several years. And now it's one of those situations where having that personalized individual audio experience isn't just a nice to have. in a lot of ways, it's a necessity, right?
It absolutely is. And, Rick, if I was to rewind the clock back to when we were in grade school, I remember getting very excited when they'd roll that 27-inch TV in on the giant cart because you were going to watch a movie, or possibly bring in that tape recorder and you got to use a set of headphones for the day. And that was a novelty. And we could argue how essential that really was to our early education years. But you fast forward today, and post-pandemic, you realize we're in a world where nearly every student has some kind of a one-to-one device, whether that's a take-home device or the school has it, and they check them out on the day-to-day basis. Every student is afforded the opportunity to have that one-to-one solution. And that's provides teachers with a near limitless number of options when it comes to personalizing content. But then you say, well, where's the audio? Where's the headset? Kind of rear its head into that need. When you have 30 students in the same classroom and you want to offer personalized content, then you need to offer a personalized audio experience, or you just have a big room full of noisy soup that no one can really hear. And then, of course, the quality of the audio makes a big difference. The pronunciation of words makes a big difference, and how clearly that student can hear the content, and how isolated. Is it an on-ear or over-ear design based on the situation? Some are going to offer more passive noise cancellation, where others are going to offer more the ability to hear environmental sounds. So each situation is going to require a different headset, and the purposeful selection of that headset becomes essential. And then you could even fast forward, and something that's coming up, as late as 2024, it's a hot topic for us. Is we're contacted regularly by content partners that want to partner with us because the quality of the microphone becomes increasingly important. And you look at AI systems now that are grading and evaluating the accuracy of the spoken word into the microphone from students. Well, a poor quality microphone that doesn't capture what's actually coming out of the student's mouth doesn't offer the input that system needs. So the need for a high quality microphone is now greater than ever, and will only increase in the coming years.
Now, you touched upon several different areas that we're going to get a little more granular with. First of all, I want to go back to the fact that, these are years that we all want to try to forget, but 2020 and 2021, some of the most challenging years ever in the education space. When we hit the pandemic, everything just changed astronomically. I mean, they're exponentially. There's no way to define just how much the learning experience had to change because it had to adapt. But then when everybody came back into the classroom, suddenly school systems recognized having students having these one-to-one devices isn't, again, one of those, oh, it's nice to have, or, oh, they just need it when they're doing the distance learning from home. They found so many different ways to incorporate that into the classroom. And I really love the way that you termed it before, where you were talking about soup. It just becomes this sort of big audio stew when you've got students in a classroom that are not only trying to hear, but then also trying to communicate. And I'm going to give a use case for this. A lot of times you have school systems that have challenged resources. We understand that there are some school systems that have teacher shortages. And for one reason or another, you end up having the concept of distance learning happen within a school system. In other words, you have one chemistry teacher, and so you have several chemistry classrooms around the school system, but only one chemistry teacher or two chemistry teachers. Well, now school systems are finding, well, we can have those teachers teach to the other school buildings virtually and have everybody at the same time. But again, if you're trying to do that with the traditional big TV screen or projector and the big speaker, I mean, just the audio problems with that alone, when you're trying to hear the professor, when you're trying to hear what other people are asking the professor, when you're trying to speak and ask questions of the professor or the teacher. Again, I always call them professors, whether they're K-12, high school, higher ed, they're all professors to me. But when you're trying to interact like that, that is just a nightmare that you seem to have found the easy button to solve.
Well, we certainly hope so. Right. So, Rick, I love where you went with the easy button, but I might venture to say that rather than an easy button, our goal is to create an easy console because every situation that you're going to come across in education is going to require a different button. And like we talked about, some are going to require a full passive noise cancellation coming from the ear cup. Others, you're going to want the environmental sound to come through. So there's two different easy buttons there. Sometimes you're going to want that noise canceling microphone because you're going to be in an environment where there's a lot of background noise, and that noisy soup doesn't just go away when you have headsets. There's still rattling papers and environmental noises in the classroom, and a noise canceling microphone is going to allow you to isolate that. And then you start looking. I loved your example about the one chemistry teacher, because we see that seemingly around foreign languages frequently. There's only one teacher in the district that can teach that one class. And so, oftentimes we talk about the negatives of the pandemic, but during crisis, we learn what's possible. And what we learned is that, hey, this remote style of learning is something that we can actually do. And so now that one teacher that can speak French across campus can teach every student that wants to learn French in the classroom. And so now you dive into the area of education where we go from one to many down to a one-to-one. And when are they, and the need for that high quality audio, and foreign language is a wonderful example of that. The need to hear very specific pronunciation in that one-to-one learning environment becomes absolutely critical. And so while I appreciate the easy button and the recognition that we've done a good job of trying to help education, Rick, I might argue we've created an easy console.
And you've created several easy buttons. And that really is what, I think a lot of folks need to understand is, and believe me, I'm talking from experience, one size fits all is not one size fits all. For me, anybody who's seen my photo on the website or on the podcast graphics, you see that I'm a little bit of a larger mammal. For me, a one size fits all means that I just got myself another rag garment that I can use to, clean my dash or clean my windows. But one size fits all doesn't fit all. And so you've got to have those multiple types of solutions for every area. And I especially love that you talked about the environmental sound, because I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. You get those noise canceling headphones and the students engage the noise canceling, and then they don't hear the bell. They don't hear announcements. And sorry to say, we've got to be diligent in today's schools because you never know what's going to happen. Any kind of ruckus, any kind of commotion, there are procedures that they have in place. But if the students don't hear the commotion happening outside the classroom, they don't know that they need to then, do whatever it is that they need to do, whether it's shelter or whether it's move to a different area. I mean, there are a lot of reasons why you want to have that mixture. So I really love that you have those options. Now, one thing I'm going to jump in on based off of what you said in your answer, we talked about foreign languages. And this is another area where school systems are finding challenges. I can remember back in the day, and again, dating myself, we had foreign exchange students come over, but the foreign exchange students had to speak fluent English. And there were some that spoke fluent English better than others. But, they integrated themselves pretty well to the school. Today, that's not a requirement because a school system can't say, well, you can't come to class because you're not fluent in English or as fluent as you want to be. And so there are students that are coming into the classrooms. And my own son saw this last year where he had a student come into his classroom who didn't speak English at all. Now, my son, being the enterprising person he was, immediately went to Google Translate on his Chromebook and started to have a conversation with the student to make him feel a little more welcome. But you don't obviously have that ability. But with a one-to-one audio solution, there is the potential to still reach that student with, some type of interpretation service, right?
Absolutely. And when you start looking at that need for that high quality input, we go right back to it. Those translation systems are only going to be as good as the input of the audio and the microphone and the ability of the microphone to pick up. And what's exciting about that for your son, of course, is now you fast forward. So now the exchange student returns home and you've already learned to communicate with someone that can't speak the same language when they're in front of you, and inadvertently also learned how to communicate with that person from a distance. So your son has likely made a lifelong friend that may never speak the same language as they do. And that's the power of technology when it's fully embraced. And I love the word enterprising young man as you use to describe your student. But when people look at technology as a tool, the possibilities are absolutely endless.
And it goes right back to, again, requiring this in the classroom. And that's where I want to jump on another point that we made earlier, where you talked about these devices being accessible. I live here in Maryland, and I have children in a school system that I'm not going to name because I don't want any repercussions. But we were told, have your student bring headphones to school. And so I, of course, went out and bought what I thought were really good headphones and sent them to school with my kids. And promptly within 2 to 3 weeks, they were broken. And then I bought slightly less expensive headphones that I sent to school, and they came back broken. And so, it was going back and forth, because this isn't something you want to leave in the school building. Just to have a bad actor come along and put them in the wrong backpack. But, having them at the school for the students, again, you're eventually going to either get people like me who then finally said, okay, that's it. I'm only spending $20 on Amazon, and I'm not getting good quality audio to my kids because they're just going to break them. Or, you get the parents who really want to send devices. They want to send good quality headphones with their students to school, but they don't have the means to do so. And so this is where, we're looking to school systems to step up, but they're working with their limited budget, right?
They are, and it's a slippery slope that you're describing, and certainly recognize that we're not in a position on this podcast to make every decision for every school system across the country. But I would warn a school system that says, just have the students bring their own. They're opening up a can of worms that they really don't want to deal with. Outside of the obvious, which is there will be a disparity. One of the huge strides we've tried to make in the K-12 education sector in the market through the last decade has been equity. We want equity for every student. We're inadvertently creating a gap based on someone's financial status and their ability to purchase a headset, and we're improving or disabling their ability to learn at an equitable level based on the family's financial status. It couldn't be a worse situation when you look at it from that standpoint. But then you also look at it from the standpoint that you experienced. So perhaps the headset that a loving father goes to the store to purchase doesn't have the right tool set that you need to learn at the education level. Maybe it doesn't have the headset that you need that has the noise cancellation built into the microphone. Maybe it doesn't have the durability as you experience. When we build a headset for K-12, the first thing that people want to know is how durable is it? Is this going to last in a backpack for the next 2 years? And the answer has to be yes. Next, how chew resistant is this? Now, your children are certainly older, Rick, but younger children, that's one of the top questions we get. How chew resistant is this cable? How chew resistant is this going to be? Is it safe if a student does chew on it? Perhaps is one of the greatest dangers of randomly buying something on Amazon or a mass market where the testing might not be as rigorous as it is when you live and breathe in an education world. So not only is it an issue of safety for the student when you allow a student to just bring in whatever they have, it's an issue of equity. And it's an issue of function, because unless that headset, again, we talked about this earlier, when you're a company that very purposefully designs a headset with every feature, every curve, every connector designed for the education K-12 market, then you have a headset that should be used in that space. But if the headset's designed for Tommy to listen to his tunes on the way home from school, it might not be as ideal for education as you would expect.
No, and that's absolutely true. And again, I as a parent recognize that. I recognize that I wasn't sending them to school with the best I could send them. But again, like you said, it's a durability issue because, a lot of these devices that are on the mass market are not designed for that. Like you said, they're not designed to go in a backpack and that's going to get flung into the corner when they come in from school at the end of the day. That gets flung into the bus seat when they're getting on the bus in the morning, ends up getting banged against the inside of a locker or, the walls of the hallway because you're trying to navigate the crowded spaces. And it really is a tremendous challenge to try to find products that have that durability but still have that quality. And knowing that your company has made this, its mission, its purpose, is something that can really deliver peace of mind to anybody who's looking to Daily and looking to Avid and saying, what can you do for us on the audio side?
That's absolutely right. And it even goes beyond the plastics and the connectors. If you really dive deep, and I know the folks at Daily are incredibly smart and they know audio well. When you look at what you might be purchasing for your son to go and listen to music and then also go to school, you might find that the EQ curve is even a little bit heavier on the bass, a little bit heavier on the high end, so that music sounds really nice. But an education headset is really designed to be focused on what? The spoken voice. That's the part that really matters, be that the teacher in a remote situation, content being streamed where a teacher or some other person is speaking to the student. So we have to make sure that spoken voice is really amplified. And, we take our headsets at trade shows all the time, and you guys know this, you've seen it. We bend them in half, we twist them into pretzels. We make sure that they know that these things aren't going to break. And then we let people listen to them so that they can hear that spoken voice so clear. And when they hear that, it blows their mind. And that's why I appreciate the compliments that you gave us on the headset that you're using. I know that you're hearing people, you're on conference calls all the time, and the clarity that you hear in the spoken voice starts to resonate. And you're like, wait a minute, this is competing all of a sudden with the $200 or $300 headset, but you're not paying that for it. And the short answer is because you shouldn't have to.
No, absolutely. And then, I have to say, so going off of that and talking about conference calls, we've been talking a lot about the education space, but like you said, you have headsets that are, in transportation, you have headsets that are in hospitality, you have headsets that are in healthcare. Daily, obviously a reseller in the sled space. We have state and local government, and there are a lot of people that don't realize just how challenging it is when they're in an environment like today's remote environment where people are constantly working hybrid, where a headset would be something that would be a blessing because you're no longer hearing the lawnmower running outside your house on the days when the neighbor decides that he's going to cut his lawn while you're on that most important conference call with all of the department heads. You don't hear the dog barking. You don't hear the kids playing in the other room. We've gotten used to all of those things. We tend to ignore them. We sort of pretend that they don't happen. But to know that that audio could be clipped off with, like you said, that noise canceling microphone where you're not worried about anybody hearing anything but your voice, that could be invaluable to some of our state and local government agencies throughout Maryland and Virginia that we serve.
You're 100% right, Rick. And whether you're talking about a classroom or you're talking about a conference call, you're talking about the average business professional that's sitting at their desk at home while they're working from home that day or working remote. It's the level of isolation that they require that we want to provide. Some are going to require a full submersion. They're going to want to hear absolutely nothing outside of the call that they're on, and they're going to want the call they're on to hear nothing outside of what they want them to hear. And that's exactly what we do. We provide the right solution for the right environment. So yeah, I appreciate you recognizing that.
And I will give you one other compliment. You have a mute button on the control, your little control center where you can raise and lower the volume on the headset, and you have a mute button right there because how many times have people started talking on conference calls because they put themselves on mute and then they cannot get their mouse scrolled over fast enough to that mute area on Teams or Zoom or whatever platform they're using? I don't have that problem anymore because I have a little button that's right next to me hanging right off of the cord, and I'm able to push and I'm able to push again. And it, to me, that has been a lifesaver because there have been so many times that previously that I would start talking and find that I was talking to myself and didn't know that I was talking to myself until somebody said, you're on mute. That has to be one of the most said phrases in the business world these days is you're on mute. I don't have that issue anymore. So you've solved that for me. So again, another easy button in that easy console.
Well, thank you, Rick. I appreciate it. I'm glad that you're getting enjoyment out of the headset and that you're able to use it. And we'll have to make sure your son gets the right headset for his experience as well.
Oh, well, we'd love to hear that. So, Mike, as we're getting ready to wrap this up, any final thoughts about incorporating that audio into the classroom setting, the conference room, wherever?
Rick, I think maybe the advice I would offer anybody listening is if you're in the process of selecting a headset, be it ours or someone else's, be intentional about what you're selecting. Take the time to realize that not every headset fits every use application. There's, when you look at our product line alone, you're going to find different size frames around the headsets, different feature sets for each application. And that's industry wide. So don't take a feature for granted. Don't assume that something that you might need for listening to music, while you're working out is the same thing that you're going to need for a conference call. So take the time to evaluate what's the job that really needs to be done by that headset, and then make sure you select the right headset for that application.
And, Daily and Avid will work tirelessly to make sure that you get the right product. Again, we have, a great relationship with you at Avid. Anybody who comes in that is looking for these headsets, we're more than happy to show them what you have, give them something to test. As we used to say years ago, the proof is in the pudding. You can't taste the pudding, you can't see the pudding, then you have no idea what the pudding is. So it's all about being able to hear and being able to experience. And that's something that we're always willing to do with anybody out there who's looking to adopt these solutions.
Rick, yes. And one of the joys that we have in working with Daily is that if any part of this conversation has confused the listener, then reach out to Daily. The experts are there. They're willing to help you select the right headset for the right application and really make sure that you end up with the product that's going to do the best for you. So absolutely, Rick, I think the synergy between Daily and Avid is a powerful one. And I think a lot of customers can benefit from reaching out.
And we certainly hope. Now, you guys are going to be at our Daily Technology Showcase in October, correct?
I believe we are.
Excellent. Well, and this is going to be a perfect opportunity for people to see exactly what it is that you have. And again, it's not just seeing, it's hearing, because I think with your products, it's seeing and hearing are believing.
And to prove that point, you've been recording your audio for this podcast on your Avid headset.
Rick, thank you so much again for having me. I think that if people reach out to Daily and they start to explore Avid, they're really going to start to hear the Avid difference.
Completely agree. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. We loved having you and can't wait to talk more to the folks at Avid throughout the year.
And that wraps up another insightful episode of the Daily Technology Pulse podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Before we sign off, we want to take a moment to remind you of some important legal considerations. The views and opinions expressed by guests on the Daily Technology Pulse podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of Daily Computers or its partners. The content provided in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of Daily Computers Inc. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can find us at www.daly.com. The Daily Technology Pulse podcast will be back with more exciting discussions on the latest in technology. Until next time, stay curious and stay connected.